we want it to
Record, not play.
Yeah, it's recorded.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Recording now, yeah.
I think there's 3 instructions right above it.
Start recording, press the red button. Look at that. All right, we're recording. I'm gonna start. It is 6:02. All right, get underway. First order is to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was, when was that? It was, I think March.
Yeah.
Was it? Was that far back?
March 20th.
Yeah, okay. The only thing that I saw was Rich's last name was incorrect.
Okay.
He's not Shivery. So.
Okay. I had gone this from my perspective. It looked accurate on.
Okay. Anyone else have any other comments on the minutes?
Motion to approve?
What's the second? All in favor? Aye. All right. So then after that, we've got nothing on the consent agenda, open forum. Oh, hey. And actually, while we're here, I just want to keep doing attendance. So, your names?
There's Bill Cahalan.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Bill Cahalan, Cahallane.
And yours.
Noreen Cahalan.
And that does it. Okay. Financial report.
Okay, so you guys have it. I put the end of June revenue report. So that's the end of the fiscal year. So, kind of what you see year to date is the total for the year of revenues brought in by the harbor. So as you can see, we're about 15, 17,000 off of last year. So very close in what we produced revenue-wise, 1,575,000 and some change there. So overall, it was a good year. Our transient dockage remains strong every season, and if there's any questions with the particular line items for the month, I certainly can address them, but I think we had a good year. So, okay.
Any questions? Nope. Okay. So we're gonna move on to new business, which is the proposed dock renewal and reconfiguration, 35 Snowing Road.
Okay, hi.
Hi, Wayne.
A place that I can either sit, I'll stand, I don't mind. How are you?
Good.
Good evening, I didn't know the circus was in town. Fun parking out there.
This is restarting. I don't know what-
And too bad they're sold out.
Yeah.
I think he's loading a document. I think somebody took over. Have you got somebody in the back or?
Are you doing anything?
Is anyone else doing anything?
Oh, electronically, no, I
Okay.
didn't send you anything.
That's fine.
Shall we?
Yeah.
So something's going on.
Yeah.
with our-
I mean, it's still recording. Should we
You
pause?
guys are
here?
still recording.
Okay.
There's just an issue with the go to the meeting, trying to fix it.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I did
See,
send
that's
you-
why we're here,
You did.
Rich.
Everybody has the electronic plan,
Very
so
good.
everybody can follow you.
My name is Wayne Tavares. I'm a professional weapons scientist, a couple other things, constructive supervisor. And I routinely do docks on Cape Cod. and this is my first time to Harwich. Not to Harwich Conservation, but to Harwich Waterways. So I have met with Conservation on this project. This is a filing with Conservation. I understand you're the advisory commission, and we're pending or changing a dock license. An existing dock license been in place for quite a long time. So what I've done is I've talked to John and Amy Usowski, sort of off the record, I guess, with some recommendations, and then I proposed something, and then John and I had a conversation, and we retracted that, and we're proposing this new dock. So what I've done in this project is there was a part of the dock that was static at one time. So what we did is we've taken advice from John. This is a problem, this dock is a problem two ways. It has some shellfish on it, you have a shellfish study. We're willing to do whatever the Waterways Committee suggests on this. And also we brought it out too far on the last, or first event. So what we've done is we've brought it back into conformment, but unfortunately we can't meet the second criteria of enough depth. So dredging was an issue, so we redesigned this in two ways. We've shown you a cross section as well as a plan view of the dock. The owners have a sizable boat that they have historically docked at their dock. I've showed the old location. This is the licensed location, the black that exists on here, of where the dock used to be, or is licensed to be. So we've tried to improve this in two ways. One is to bring it in a little bit more. Unfortunately, we have to do some dredging. We show you mean low water and where it exists, and mean high water. Myself, I get involved with these. Sometimes I supervise the docks, etc. So I get into these projects pretty deeply. I waited out on low tide and placed the marker that some of you may have seen at the end. And that's 65 feet away from the static portion of this dock. We intend with Conservation, there's a water-dependent portion of this and a non-water dependent portion. The water-dependent portion is what we're here to talk about. Conservation will deal with everything that's above zone VE, for example, as a good cutoff point. So we're looking to reestablish a new set of steps. Everything that is here is so old that it's substandard, the width is not proper, it's dilapidated, falling apart. So starting with the steps, we're coming down, we wish with Conservation to permit new steps coming down onto a permanent dock that also will be brought up to specifications that are shown in the construction drawings. So we want to go out to a certain point, and like I said, my 65 foot from the end of the static portion is between the A and the actual dock, so it's probably on the second hash line. I'll try to show you all where it is. That's 65 feet. But it's slightly beyond where the float is, just beyond the existing float, right in this area.
And what are you saying that is there?
I walked out to it, and I had a guy videotape me. I was up to here, which is about 4.5 feet.
Okay, got it.
Is where I was.
Yeah.
So at low tide, we were there at 3:36 in the afternoon, whatever date that I went out. So we measured the 65 feet, it's straight out now. We also try to do this for navigation. So two reasons is to get it at proper depth and get it out of the way of navigation. We think, since it was here before, that's historically the location, that we're moving it slightly in. Witchmere Harbor is such a beautiful harbor, but its entrance is so narrow. We are trying to allow people to get around. When I spoke with Mr. Rendon before, he mentioned that the moorings would be assigned. There's a couple moorings that are in the way. We went back with a surveyor. The surveyor came out and did all the bathymetrics of this, and John had asked us to do more bathymetrics so we could see the actual depth. So we carry this out to -11. as far as contours are concerned. And we picked up the moorings that existed. So you see there's little triangles on here, moorings. A few of them, three of them, I guess, would be impacted by this new.
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially. And I guess they can be relocated. So.
Potentially.
Potentially.
Tight squeeze it.
Okay, so what we've done is a pretty good job of replicating exactly what was in place before, trying to improve it, because we are asking the blessing of this Waterways Commission for advice to the Conservation Commission. We have proposed this to Conservation, not yet. So we are proposing it to Conservation, and anything that you say will go into the record, of course, for them. And they're looking for your advice in regards to this. These are all built with 10-inch piles. I mean, the construction is pretty common. Amy was happy that we're puncturing fewer holes in with the 10-inch piles that we're doing. We've put a length on each pair of piles. The suggestion was here also to put monopiles in here. So we started at the shore with the typical piling, and we ended before the ramp to the float with typical pilings too on either side, and in between we're using monopiles. So we're trying to enhance a project that has long been overdue and trying to make it permanent. And dredging was configured and necessary, and it's shown in the cross section as well. We're showing the area. We're trying to move less than 100 cubic yards, and that's what it calculates out to. So there's the area, and the cross section shows the volume. So we've done it both ways. We're looking again for your advice. I'm sure there's going to be a few questions. And I would be surprised if the neighbors or whatever haven't come to ask their own questions. But there's the construction. There's the dredging that would occur below in order to maintain 3 feet below mean low water. So in other words, we have to go to elevation 5.3 because minus 2.3 is low water, and 3 feet below it, just add 3 feet, and we're at minus 5.3. So we have to do this little triangle. It's not sizable, but it just makes me think that it's going to need constant maintenance to keep it from. And then there's a shellfish report here from John Lowell, who has said that, and he's gone through it from 20 to 50 and 0 to 20. And naturally near the shore, there's more shellfish than there is out where we're doing our float. So out where we're doing our float is not such a bad situation. And then whatever you suggest with regard to either relocating shellfish or based on John's report, what you're thinking, that's it for me. I'm going to keep it short. I understand there's other people probably coming behind me. So thank you.
Thank you. So I guess we'll hear from the harbor master on this project.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, I've had several conversations with Wayne over the project. Like he said, his initial plan that he put forward had the dock going out 94 feet from mean high water. As you know, the bylaw states that no more than 80. So he's made that adjustment, which is, obviously will require dredging, but your dock is somewhat almost 15 feet, just by rough calculation, 20 feet further in, closer to shore than the existing historical dock that's in place, so that's always a good thing. Dredging, I know it's, and I'll let Don speak to the shellfish, but we have many cases of dredging in Richmond. There's a number of projects that have required that small volume, less than 100 cubic yards of dredging. So I support that. I think it's a good thing to get the depth you require where you're proposing the structure. So And all other aspects, as far as the 65 foot from an existing, from an adjacent structure, I don't see any situation that would require a variance, and from my perspective, being in closer to shore from a navigation standpoint is always a good thing. So I did a site visit. I did the site visit, frankly, when you had marked the initial plan, the initial going out, right? And you have since adjusted it, and I think that's a big improvement. So as being proposed, from my perspective, I don't see any issue with it. And I'll,
Yeah.
Sure.
Natural resource officer?
Yeah, so of course the significance of Witchmere Harbor on the Natural Resource Department side is any type of dredging is very, very important, closely looked at. Most definitely because of the fact of our shellfish propagation lab being right there in Witchmere.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, on the north side of the public landing. It's currently occupied and will be occupied up until early October with between 3/4 and $1 million of combination of quahogs and oysters.
Okay.
So, of course, giving time of year restrictions, I do appreciate you, working with us on relocation of that. One thing that I think would be apparent is reimbursement at the least of seed cost, where we would be able to reseed that area once everything settles down. And we'll be looking at quantity wise, a little uncertain. Given the shellfish survey, it doesn't really seem like there's that much. I know that it being closer and farther away from the shoreline, we have some parameters to deal with there. I think what we would ask for is at least a substantial amount of seed to be purchased for my approval. So I think it's a heads up. That's where I'd be looking at. But other than that, I think everything else looks sufficient enough. So.
Let me just take a moment. You assign the cost for the seed?
So we have we purchase our seed in the fall for the upcoming year. So our seed price points are based off of what we get for Barnstable County funding as well as out-of-pocket natural resource budget money. So our overall rate is calculated. What we'd be able to do is I could write up a proposal, give you a proposal. If you like it or not, we'd be able to work on it and see about what I would assume that we would have to replenish in that area.
Sure.
Within the footprint of your original existing structure plus the dredging area
Sure.
overall, and of course being less than 100 cubic yards. It doesn't sound like a lot, but we're in a tight area. We heavily seed Witchmere.
Okay.
So I'm sure, and I know based off of this, what it seems like the majority of it is that what was found was seed less than an inch.
Sure.
Which is most likely seed that was placed in September of 23.
Oh, okay.
So that's already a wash if we're gonna start moving that out anyway, so we have to replenish that at least. So.
And have they found, like in a lot of the ponds that I permit these docks in other towns, how should I say this? Without making a dock sound like a good thing, the proximity of docks usually make the seed area between more plentiful because no water skiers usually go between them. I have another pond in mind right now, but you get two docks that are out and the seed area is between them. So they tend to work and protect an area that's closer to shore within the dock's lengths on either side. Plus we've got way more than the 65 foot. So this is just a rhetorical question. It's not a question I really want to put on the table. I'm just wondering, future reference, this reference, how shellfish are protected by a dock or a series of docks from their length in.
I think it's a broader answer to your question. I don't think that there's any studies to my knowledge that's done specifically in Witchmere and more directly in this area and the correlation between distances of docks.
Okay.
I do know that there are public access among the areas for recreational shellfishing. So whether it were to be, near or around the dock. It still is accessible to a degree. So giving that, I don't think that we have to really play into the deeper protection of it, but.
Yeah, I'm not looking for a set answer, I'm looking for a general feeling on it, because the shellfishermen will come in, and they'll shellfish right next to the dock.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
they're allowed to,
Yeah.
so, okay. Thanks.
No problem. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
So
Yeah.
this is not a new dock, it's the replacement of an existing dock, is that, or the modification of an existing license?
Yes, it's an amendment, that's what they asked for, the state DEP with the license. They said if you're changing it just an inch, they wanna know. An inch, I'm getting a little carried away, but a foot or whatever. The angle of this is changing and the length is changing, so they wanna know, they call it an amendment to a license.
So by right, could you repair the historic dock that's in place?
Repair, yes, but it's so substandard. The width is substandard. The width of the stairs is substandard. The fact that you would, I don't want to say the word, it's another town, they call it poking holes into the floor. Less so. This is such an improvement, but overall, this is not a place to repair. It's just too old. So we're going to widen it. We're going to change the length, change the direction. There's too many things here to
But
consider.
no, obviously
We
you're
don't-
making it a lot better, but I was just curious if by
Yeah,
right
anytime you make a
could-
change to an existing float under a license, you have to then bring it back to, or you bring it in compliance with current regulation.
I got you.
And it is not in
Oh, yeah.
compliance. So any change to that dock, he will have to make it so that it's in compliance
So
with.
it's still the same process to fix that or
Right.
do something nice.
Right.
I got you.
And it's actually gonna take up less space and enhance navigation.
I believe so, absolutely.
Okay.
Is it at the proper length, John? Are we? the
You're at
first
80
one-
feet from mean high water. Don't exceed that, otherwise it requires a variance, and
Okay,
I wouldn't support it like I told you.
right,
With the
right,
94 that you came in, it's just,
right.
so right now, as your plan says, from mean high out, you're at 80 feet.
Yeah, and just to go on the record for that, there's always two criteria to go by. There's length and length to get out to proper depth. And that's why I came in with the original 90.
Yeah, no, I get it. You didn't want to dredge initially, but yeah.
So we pulled it back, now we have to dredge, and that's a little bit of the history that John and I have gone through, and hopefully it satisfies this committee.
Anyone else?
You throw it open to the public too, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Any questions for the public? Anyone make a motion?
Make a motion to accept these plans. I'm just trying to find a number for it.
Let's see. I would use the project
Project number 23, 9,000?
Yeah.
Project number 24,
23?
24,
Just on the other side, I think it's.
What do you have?
23, yep, dash 9,000.
And dated too, I think. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
We all sign it.
No data.
They all sign
There's
it.
an existing license that we could use too. And that was brought in on a deed or.
Well, we go after we approve the plan, we sign it, so,
Okay. Anything you need, I'm here to provide. So,
anyone want a second?
Second.
So the proposal is, the motion is to accept the proposal as written.
Yep. Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Sign.
So just sign 2 copies. Are you going tonight? to
No,
conservation?
she canceled that.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so, August, something or other, yeah.
So you're not, you
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
So I'll be able to take these signed.
We're gonna give you
copies.
one signed copy and I'm gonna keep one.
Got it.
Are we starting one down here at this
Why don't
end?
you start one?
Sounds easier.
So this is the second night of the circus in town?
Yeah, I think it's the first night. First, isn't it?
I didn't notice it pulled up. I was like, oh no.
Yeah. Only the one page?
I was gonna take my wife out to dinner, I think she wants to go to the circus instead.
Is that it?
The second.
Goes to Jay.
That's one copy. You wanna give him a copy?
Sure.
This is all signed. Did we confirm
Yep.
everybody signed?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the
So this is
second one.
mine. Are we all set?
We are, sir.
You wanna leave? I thought you were gonna stay. You just got off comfy.
That's his
Call it throwing the game,
You
yeah.
There's one, I've only signed one.
Oh.
Yep.
I've only,
We need to sign, Jay needs to sign that
It'll be
one.
cooler outside than it is in here.
They stealing your power, is that it?
Here's my card as well. We'll work on a proposal.
Okay, yeah. John, nice to meet you. Yeah, wait, yeah. Thanks, everybody, have a good night.
Thank you, too.
Thank you so much.
you can't have a couple of hard copy plans of the next project.
Yeah, they're tiny on the printout.
I know. And then you guys can show that.
All right, so what we got going on now is the proposal for bulkhead replacement, dredging and install of floats for scallop farming, 11 River Bend Road, BSC Group.
Yeah, Jeff Lang, David Crispin with BSC, he is gonna do the honors.
All right, we've got it. One moment, there's a couple of people that are logged in, I just got first names. We have Caleb, do we have a last name for Caleb?
He's channel 18.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Well, what about, we have caller and caller 1. Anyone want to identify themselves under caller or caller 1? Okay, how about Paul?
Last name Kelly.
Thank you. All right, take it away.
Okay, David, go ahead.
All right, can you give me rights to share? Or do I have that ability now?
If not, he looks like he might be going to do that.
There you go.
There you go.
All right, let's not share the agenda. Stop sharing. How do I get this to share the right screen? Well, maybe we do it with this. Are we seeing a PowerPoint yet?
Nope,
Still not seeing it?
nope.
Sometimes I hate these systems. with the commission, the town actually should share this. Is it easy if you guys just to put up what we sent this afternoon?
We can ask Caleb if he can do that, I think.
Caleb, can you hear
Hold on a
us?
second, let's try this.
There we go.
There you go.
Now we're seeing a PowerPoint.
Yep.
Yes.
Keep learning from the tricks. Good afternoon. Actually evening, I believe. Dave Briscoe with the BSC Group, Civil Engineer and Surveyor. And we've got about 9 slides I want to walk you through very quickly to explain what we're doing here. I think you all hopefully understand where we are on the Herring River. That red little upside down L is where the new bulkhead and floats are to go. This is what it looks like pretty much today. This bulkhead was put in place about 1930. And as you can see, the back of it is held together with rotten pieces of plywood with holes you can put through, which causes the soil behind it to go into the river. Not a good situation, so it's time to do something. Those bars that you see going from right to left are the tieback rods that were put in originally. Understanding your commission's task, we did take a look at what the river looks like, and the narrowest point is south of the site. It's about 70 feet wide back there. We're at about 103 at our site. And then, oops, just zoom in a little closer for easier reading there. We're looking at putting a 6-foot wide float in there, and I'll go through what this is all about in a second. So we're going to use up a little of that 103 feet. Just historically, this is the 1930 land court plan that did not have a bulkhead at the time, and it shows fishing shacks right along this area. And the plan on the right is the Chapter 91 plan from 1930 that shows the proposed bulkhead and dredging. And interesting enough, the filling of the landward of the bulkhead, which tells us this land was actually filled land back to the left. Very quickly, a site plan of what we're looking at. The purple are the new floats. The green crosshatch is we're going to dredge in front of it and put it behind the new bulkhead, so that will become new salt marsh. In a quick cross section of what this looks like, the white vertical lines in the center of this image are the existing wooden bulkhead. To the left of that, 2 or 3 feet, we're going to put in a steel sheet pile, which is the turquoise color. And to the right of the sheet pile, we'll put in a vertical pile, which is a guide pile to hold the floats that will hold the clam scallop racks underneath it to the right. And I apologize, in this slide this afternoon, I'll show you in a minute, we actually modified the location of the timber pile, the tan one there. But that's kind of the general idea. So in order to keep the scallops in the water, we're going to dredge in front of the bulkhead, that little triangular shaped diamond area. It goes down to -6. That's a permitted Chapter 91 licensed depth out there. So in a nutshell, what are we going to do? We're going to remove the existing bulkhead, replace it with a new steel sheet bulkhead. We're going to do some maintenance dredging in front of the bulkhead to -6, which is under the floats. We're going to install the wood piles and guardrails and put the floats in, and the idea is that these will be year-round as they are scallop farming floats. Mitigation is designed so there's no salt marsh alteration. We're going to restore about 450 square feet of marsh behind the bulkhead. They're going to donate scallop seedings around town. And the interesting thing is these scallops actually a natural denitrification and water purifiers. So there's some benefits to this as well. This is one up at Mr. Lang's house. This is what they look like. It's a 6-foot by 12-foot float with a hatch in the 4 hatches per, with these series of cages suspended underneath the water. and I didn't have a picture of those, I guess, but they go down like a Chinese lantern, sort of, under the water. And that's kind of where we're at. There's about 100 yards of dredging. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I don't believe we are interfering with any of the moorings that are in the area or anything along that line. So with that, I'm going to open it to questions. I know that was short and sweet.
Well, I think first we'll hear from the harbor master.
Okay. I have several. So this is phase one of a larger project, is that right?
It is, but the reality of whether phase two of actually going re-dredging the original schooner bay that goes back to the house used to be a schooner boathouse. So they had direct access at, I think 6 foot below since 1930s, all the way back to where the house is now. Used to have a 30 by 40 by 6 foot deep pool under the building as a boathouse for schooners. So whether or not we ever get far enough down the road to be able to dredge that out and farm it also,
But my understanding is that is your
that would be
intent.
ideal.
That's your intention, right?
That would be ideal.
To go forward and look to continue this type of activity within the embayment of your property.
If we can get through all the hurdles of doing the dredging.
Okay.
This, though, after the last 3 storms at Christmas time and in the next couple of weeks, of watching that entire seawall be underwater and active wave action on it, I don't want to have to pay for cleaning that out of the river. So it became an emergency request to say, listen, we need to get this part of it, this 110 feet, out of there and do something with it. And as the landowner, I'm responsible for either repairing or removing the existing Chapter 91 permitted structure. So this allows me to help fund doing it because I can farm it. And if since there is no land access allowed across the marsh to get out to it, it's not of much value because I suspect that was put in place before the rock jetties were done by the Conservation Corps in probably 34, 35.
The Army Corps.
Yeah, when they were doing all the other rock work. So when it first got put in, that was probably the main barrier there was for direct wave action coming up the river at that time.
Sure.
Today, we've got the rock jetty. It's not as critical, but I believe the best thing for the river is for us to stabilize that bank and not have it get eroded and washed back out into the mouth of the river. So.
Yeah, no.
I mean, this structure here would allow us to run about 100,000 animals, which pulls out 100 pounds of nitrogen and will help me provide some income return back against doing the investment of the $400,000 or $500,000 that seawall is going to cost to put back in place. So that's our rationale for doing it, because I think it's a win-win as far as helping the health of the river keeping it in place.
Obviously, from my perspective, that bulkhead is gone. Right? There's no argument here, and I don't think anybody would, obviously it needs to be replaced. So I get that. I saw, and I was looking for it, and I apologize, it's somewhere in the stuff you gave me, but I saw that the bulkhead the new bulkhead you're going to replace, on average goes landward 2.5 feet. Some is 3, some is to, right? Is that accurate?
That's
I mean,
That's correct, yes.
okay, and,
The controlling point is that bulkhead will touch the edge of the salt marsh. We can't push landward any further into that salt marsh.
okay,
And probably the only caveat is that the survey is now 2 years old. And I don't know that we've gone back out and verified that the exact distance from, that there's not been a little bit more erosion that's happened since the time that we did that survey. So if anything, it might have creeped a little bit. Our goal is to put it as far back as what conservation will allow us.
right. So essentially that washout area that's just mud, not salt marsh, right?
Correct.
You're gonna be moving that bulkhead as far as you can until it hits the salt marsh.
Yeah.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're bringing it in, on average, 2.5 feet from the existing.
Correct.
Okay.
And a little
So
more
you're-
than that at the south end of it where we connect to Dave Kelleher's
Yep.
property,
Yep.
where he has a steel.
I think I saw that was 4 point something.
Yeah,
Right?
and that's
That's
where
it.
it kind of jots out, and that's also the narrowest part of the channel.
That's correct, which is
You know,
a
so
great thing.
that's where we gain the most is by moving that part of it back.
So the plan that I have and the read that I have, your initial proposal was putting 7 floats, 8, sorry. 7 6-foot by 16 floats and 1 5x6 float. But now I read somewhere, the latest stuff that I received, you're talking 10 floats, is that right? And why, if that's true, why?
That's just, we already have that designed with a 30-inch square openings for allowing those standard oyster baskets that are 4 inches high for fitting down. The current is so strong there that sometimes the Japanese lantern nets will float out with the current and will stunt the animal's growth because they're always getting jostled and they break the front shells off.
I'm not sure.
I mean, it allows us to use a more
Why do you need
rigid
more
structure.
floats is my, they're both 6 foot wide, right? So
They're both 6 foot. That's just what we have
it's the
designed.
length of that you're changing of each float? And
Yeah, they're 6 by 12s.
okay, instead of 6 by 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the same lineal footage of floats, but just different breakdown of
And it was an
floats.
existing design configuration compared
So you're
to
not-
one that was put together.
You're not adding square footage.
No.
It's just
No, just a different structure.
Right.
So it shores up the scallops, essentially.
Yeah, you know, and it's identical to the ones that are in at
But
our house.
the footprint
up
isn't
the
any.
river. The footprint's the same.
Okay.
So
I mean, do we even, what plans are we going on?
we're going off of this, well, I mean,
I mean, if
yeah,
things are changing,
we
can we
may
even-
have to have them come back with
Yeah.
an adjusted plan, but I just want to make sure after going.
Yeah.
And just so you know, I got some of this information today, so I've read it.
But not everybody has. Possible.
Well,
But
I sent it out to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, everyone's working, everyone's,
So down the second to last page of that packet, on the plan, it says proposed 6 by 16 floats with scallop nets, 703 square feet total. So the 703 square feet is staying.
yes.
It's not,
But they're
Just the
not,
length of the
they're not
floats.
16, they're 12.
but in a different
they're adding
dimension
more.
of floats.
Right, they're gonna go into 10, but they're gonna do 16 by 12 instead of 16 by, or I'm sorry,
So-
6 by 12 instead of.
So it still nets out to 703 square feet.
Okay, so I had asked this question very early on when we sat in our conference room and had, some early discussions about this project. And I think you were gonna look at whether it was feasible. And that question is can the floats be 4 foot in length instead of 6 foot in length? I know you have an existing design, but, if we went, you got a 1 foot pile that's gonna go on the outside of the bulkhead, and then you're gonna have 6 feet beyond that, and then you're gonna have a boat that's tied up there working some of the time. You know, we're going further out into the waterway. I think it's great that we're able to move the bulkhead back a couple of feet. I think that helps. But in order to even further reduce the amount that we're going into the usable waterway that is very busy, is it possible to reduce the width of the floats?
It doesn't make it very practical
Is it?
for two reasons. One is that a 3 to 4 foot, like we talked about half, where we only have one net hanging, but a 3 foot wide floating dock is not very stable to work on.
I didn't say 3, 4.
Even 4, but I've got 30.
We have 4.
I've got
It's not like
30-inch
people are walking on these. It's just
They're float.
It's floats that have bags hanging. So again, I personally would like that to be looked at anyways, to be considered. But just, I think the project's a cool project. So I don't want to sound negative on this, but I also have to think about how busy that waterway is, how many moorings we have, how many boats come and go from the private slips, from those that use the boat ramp.
I'm one of them.
And you're one of them, I get it. And so if we can try to eliminate how much we're going out into the waterway, I think it just makes it better for all.
I'd have to work on with some
I know you would.
engineering
That's why
on whether or not we still have, I'm just thinking about the ones I have at my house, when you have the trap doors open, that by the time you have a 30-inch by 30-inch opening with the structural support that you need, because it's pretty heavy.
Why does it have to be
assembly,
30 by 30? Can that be
That's the
reduced?
those are the standard oyster baskets.
Okay,
And I just don't know enough about the existing commercial equipment
yeah,
to know, do those come in 24s?
okay.
But it ends up, the scallop's business is a square foot, and we only can have about 20 animals per square feet. So if I decrease the square feet of cage available space, I'm going to start significantly reducing the amount of animals I can have in there.
And
which
that's
just
why I
makes
kind
it
of
not
opened
very
with,
economical.
and that's kind of why I opened with
Yeah.
the first question is, this really is intended to be phase 1. And
Are you folks seeing my screen?
Yes?
The red and the purple and yellow. The image on the left is the 6 by 12-foot floats, as the way we had originally put this together, with the guide piles between the new sheet piles, which are the yellow lines, and the floats. Literally this afternoon or yesterday afternoon, Jeff and I came up with a brainstorm that if we put the guide piles between the floats, and then there is like a 1.5 foot space every, in this case 24 feet, then we can slide all of those new floats up against, literally against the sheet pile. So we already, the 6 feet that we were sticking into before has already been reduced by about 1.5 foot just by this technique. So we're working to minimize that setback.
that's great. Yeah.
And that's part of what was in the new package today, and I apologize for the lateness on that. We got comments from Division of Meat Fisheries a week and a half ago that needed to be submitted to conservation today, and your meeting was tonight, so we kind of piled a bunch of information together.
But that was one way we saw of being able to shrink it and still keep the capacity
Yeah, I mean,
up where we need it.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
I agree. Anyways, I don't want to take over this meeting. Those are some of my, discussion, some of the points that I would like to make. I think.
I mean, is it in that plan where they slide it against the bulkhead, put the piles between? I mean,
That clearly saves a foot, right?
Yeah. What is that? I mean,
if it's a 12-inch pile, I think that's a real.
But that's not in the way
positive
of, traffic or, I mean.
So what's the net impact of?
Another point, if I may, this is the existing floats that are there in the purple here, going around the outside edge. We're actually pushing back 1.5 foot from the existing floats there. In probably the most critical area where that mooring is is right here, as we can tell.
So
So
you're
we're
actually,
already sliding back, hugging against the thing as tight as we can, and if this salt marsh is moved back at all, we slide it back a little more. We got room, but it's a point literally in the center that's a point sticking out. And as you know, it's a federal project almost to alter a square foot of salt marsh.
Yeah, I mean, the 6-foot width floats, I would be very comfortable putting on the north end of that, right, the north end of the
Right.
that jogs in,
Yep.
right, outside the channel. So I'm certain, I think that's fine, right, because it's not.
Yep.
But if we can at least explore, you know, the
Anything less than 6.
you know, the east bulkhead, I guess, right?
The pilings on the outside of it as well?
There's nothing,
No,
no,
it's just a float.
It's just the
only pilings
floats.
are against the wall of what he just showed, where they
Correct.
would be built into the floats.
yeah, quite, hear from Natural
Yeah.
Resource Officer?
I have several questions as well. So quickly while we're on this, for the floats themselves and the pilings that will be attached more towards the bulkhead side, as illustrated there, that does help with the encroachment on the river. I'm sure you know how strong the tidal flow is.
Right.
How much drag do you imagine that this float with, you say, 100,000 scallops at full size? Because are you growing for seed or are you growing for harvest?
No, these are for harvest.
For harvest.
Yep.
So, do you think that what you have is an adequate amount of pilings to be able to sufficiently hold it to the bank? Even though it's muck and it erodes quickly? Because we have a disaster that could happen is we have a high flow of current that comes through like we do on strong tides that you pointed out that have
I'm
damaged
fishing
the
my
bulkhead.
baskets out of the river.
Yeah, but, and if exactly,
Right,
and it would be quite the mess. It would be a total loss for everyone. So
That's why instead of the Japanese lanterns, we're looking more at the
Trays.
metal cages that are roped together because they withstand that flow better. Because there's less deflection. They're not just getting whipped back and forth with the current.
But as of now, you're not settled on a design.
That's just what we would want to start with.
Sure.
And I think actually having the holes in between sets would probably strengthen the whole thing better than having everything just attached out to the front of it.
Because of leverage, as you're playing leverage.
Yeah.
So the other concern, and you know, to get ahead of it as well, we're not. Everybody can see that the bulkhead absolutely has to be replaced, but I would like to hear a little bit of financial history on the purchase of the property itself. Did you purchase it for single-family usage, or did you purchase it for commercial aquaculture use?
Actually, it's a both. We have several places that we use for summer rental and then expanded family groups in the summertime. And this was also when I recognized the Chapter 91 potential for farming with the ARC building right below it. It was like I already knew that the Herring River for growing scallops works really well. The algae levels that we've got and the salinity works really well for them, especially down at that end. So to me, it was sort of a win-win. And I was probably very naive at the time of understanding what are all the hoops when you already have an existing Chapter 91 from 53 on actually repairing it in 2024. That was
the bulkhead itself.
No, even the entire Chapter 91 includes the house with the embayment underneath it, the entire dredge area that is now muck was all part of that whole Chapter 91 and was allowed both in 31 and 53 to dredge and put all of the spoils on the rest of the property to build up the property.
And when was the year that you purchased the property?
2020,
So
I think.
you were aware of the bulkhead already needing replacement?
Yeah.
And the funding source at that time was for aquaculture to bring back the money into it, or was it
That was
you
part-
purchased the house? But
We were just
then
starting our aquaculture venture. And this is
so,
even still
so
our
originally
first
the
crop.
finances were to just pay out of pocket and
Uh-huh.
have to rebuild or remove the
Or remove,
pre-existing. But now this is a way that you'd be able to offset.
And when
the
I
cost.
bought it, there actually was a walkway across the marsh over to 2 floating docks out on that L-shaped end.
Do you have pictures of that?
I think it's still in,
Curious.
I think it's still in Google Earth. at that. But
Wouldn't be surprised.
Amy instructed me really soon after the closing that
To
I
move
needed
the
to
walkway.
get rid of the
Yeah.
walkway.
Sure.
And one of those 2 docks that are out on the end were not legal.
I see.
And so now I have a new one that is not usable except for high tide. But it's permitted where it is.
Sure. I think you
So-
can see my approach as it's a slippery slope to say that you can purchase a property on Herring River with the intentions of it becoming an aquaculture farm, to then say that you are refilling your bank account instead of just forking the cost of a damaged bulkhead. I think that is where I would find to be dangerous. And as residential as it is, I know that historically there were commercial uses amongst the rivers, that I'm sure there were battles between commercial versus residential way back in history. And I know that there's a little bit of an idea here as well. And, you know, the other thing that we have to make apparent is, you know, this gentleman up here mentioned maintenance dredging. Division of Marine Fisheries says this constitutes as improvement dredging because we're looking at plans that are over 90 years old by this point.
I think it's
So really
actually,
starting
they
over.
were interpreting that the material that is, when we move the bulkhead landward,
Sure.
the bank and muck that is currently behind the existing seawall, they were saying, since that's a beach, then they were saying that was the new dredging. And I think David had done
They
some
addressed
research.
it in their response, yes, I did read that. Yeah.
In his response, he addresses that on whether it really is maintenance dredging versus, what's the other one?
Improvement.
Improvement dredging.
Sure. And in the same context, you know, they state the proposal to install the new steel bulkhead 1 to 3 feet landward would permanently displace the current unvegetated seaward edge of the marsh. So it's the impact of, you know, moving it even farther does play into the ultimate permanent displacement of the marshland itself. So
And when I bought it, I had walkway and access out to a dock on a not great seawall.
sure.
But when I no longer have any land potential access to that, they're not gonna let me put a 3 foot wide, 8 feet high walkway out and then down to floating ramps out there. It becomes, a real question is, why am I doing it? Why would I want to replace that when it doesn't benefit me at all to do that?
Although by removing it, because you have to replace it or remove it, if you were to remove it, wouldn't that significantly put your property at risk?
Not at all.
Area?
No.
Even
But the
giving
mouth, the
significant
river might
tidal
be hard to
flow.
navigate with all that sand and gravel moving out to the mouth instead of being where it is. That would become, I'd have a navigation problem that I may have contributed to. But I don't normally pay directly for the dredging of the mouth of the Herring River.
Of course.
So from our committee standpoint, we're concerned about the bulkhead and the floats, no matter what their use is, as
We're
opposed
looking
to
at-
navigation. So whether he puts a tiki bar there, an oyster farm.
No, there's more to it than that.
There's a lot more.
There's a lot more to it than that because there's more phases to expansion.
That you can't deny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, or if it gets into
It's a
aid of
sticky
navigation.
wicket though. We run into that with zoning and special permits for, say, putting a detached two-car garage on. In Chatham, they love to say, it could be used for this someday. And anything at any point could be used. All we can do is evaluate the
What's in front of
application
us.
and what's here, whether or not we can't predict the future. So, we've been denied things on, the basis of, well, this could be a bedroom. Well, anything could be a bedroom. He could come back and say he wants to put a full marina in there, and at that point, we'd evaluate that application. So, I guess from my standpoint, what could be down the line, yes, it has an impact, but he's not here applying for what it could be, rather than applying for how this impacts the river and the area right now. That's just my opinion, but, so, we can talk in hypotheticals all we want, but, this is the plan, this is,
But the hypothetical, if I may.
Yes, please.
and I'm not trying to oversimplify it.
No, but I just want to be clear. The original discussion when I met with Mr. Lang
Us, the three together, Amy.
was that this was phase one of a project.
Okay.
So that's why I entered into
Yeah.
looking ahead, because I've been told that permitting allowed, his desire would be to use the embayment as well. So, and I'm not saying I'm not for that, but if he's able to do that and he can, generate the income that he would like to generate and whatever the other purposes are, by being able to farm that area, reducing a small amount by reducing the amount that he's growing along the bulkhead, that should be considered. That's where I'm at.
Oh, sure.
But he's
I
also,
mean, do we
he's
have
also
purview
running the
over
risk
the
that you may
use
not
of the
approve.
floats?
You may not, nobody may approve phase 2 or phase 3.
Well, we don't know that.
Right, and so he's running that risk if he's assuming this phase 1 establishes a precedent and a standard for phase 2 and phase 3. No, they're all stand on their own.
So just another question, is an aquaculture farm, is that, who oversees it, or is that a permitted business?
DMF, and it's actually zoned as a right to aquaculture in that area.
Oh, okay,
So it's not, it's like a right of the landowner to be able to do it.
I got you.
And David, what's the zoning reference?
The zoning is RL in that area, and aquaculture is a permitted use by right under the zoning bylaw.
Huh.
The only permit required, in my opinion, for the aquaculture portion is a conservation approval. That
And-
is independent a little bit about dredging and bulkheads and anything else, but that's who controls the aquaculture permit.
And Board of Selectmen.
There is no planning board you would have to go through for a special permit or anything?
Not that I can see in the bylaw, no.
DMF and Board of Selectmen are who we had to go through to get my house up on Riverside Drive as a scallop aquaculture site. Identified
Just to provide
do
a
aquaculture.
little clarity on that issue of zoning, Amy Zlowski forwarded me the opinion of town council on this issue of zoning in case it came up. And, the opinion is that the bulkhead itself, it would be subject to zoning, but as a replacement, it's not likely that any kind of zoning relief would be needed. And it's the opinion that the floats and the submerged scallops would not be subject to zoning. So that's the latest opinion of town council on that issue. So
Yeah.
it supports what you're saying, I
Yeah.
think.
So John, in a way to be supportive of a new business idea, would it be appropriate to look at this application as it is and then say, with the future addition of new, what do you call them, cages?
Cages, yeah.
New cages, we would look, the requirement would be for a reduction of the cages along that eastward bulkhead. So, he gets it, the quantity to start, but eventually would move some of that resource to a less, an area that is less impactful for the river and, you know, boaters and everything else.
I mean, you guys as a committee can, you know,
But I don't think we
provide
can
your,
limit him on what he
your
does
input.
in other phases. I mean, if he proves that phase one works, then you're gonna take that away if he goes for phase two, take part of that away.
Well, phase two is a much
Yeah, I mean,
in-depth
but I'm just
process. That wouldn't
saying,
just be
yeah, I don't even know if we can even talk about phase two. I mean,
Right.
Is it, I mean, but,
Yeah, and that's not before us, and I
Yeah.
agree.
Sure.
But I'm considering it because it was part of our initial discussion, so I'm gonna provide an opinion based upon what's in front of me and what's being proposed. But I'm just being very transparent that I also understand that there's a bigger
Plan.
piece of this that we could be looking at. So,
And Dan,
Yeah.
can I hear from the public?
yes, absolutely, no, that's what I was,
Yeah, yeah, can we kind
so,
of
ma'am?
move up?
Yes. May I have your seat, please? Thank you. My name is Veronica Halen, and I'm speaking for neighbors who object to a scallop farm. The neighbors do not want a commercial scallop farm in their neighborhood. We do not object to the bulkhead being replaced. We object to floats. They are requesting 700 square feet of floats to be permanently in place on the bulkhead. It will impede on the waterway. It will impede on people who have moorings in the boat, people who travel the waterway. It will boats will dock there to do fishing. You know, it is not a good idea. And I believe Mr. Lang has not been really forthright with you. The gentleman from National Resources asked if you bought the property with the intention of having a commercial scallop farm. I believe the answer is yes. I believe he's not being forthright. He bought 11 River Bend, September 16th, 2021. He has two legal entities, LLCs, that he is a manager with Daniel Ward, who is Ward Agriculture Farming, who does oyster farming, scallop farming, and the systems that he is talking about having in place, I'm sure are the systems that Mr. Ward uses for his aqua farming. The first entity was created November 1st, 2019. That was 2 years before he purchased this property. And the purpose for that entity is to raise and market bay scallops and property cage systems and the Nantucket estuary system. Sounds like the Herring River. The name of that company is the Scallop Bay Shellfish Company. It was formerly known as Nantucket Sound Bay Scallop Company. And the managers are Jeffrey Lang and Andy Ward. There's a second legal entity, 18 Wings Neck LLC, formerly known as Scallop Bay Marina LLC. And again, the managers are Jeffrey Lang and Daniel Ward, and that was created in December of 2019. And the purpose of that entity is ownership, management, and leasing of real property, piers, floats, and marina dockage, and any other lawful activity conducted under the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I think this shows that he purchased the property with the idea of a commercial scallop farm. And when you asked that question outright, he said it was for boating. I find that not very believable, personally. The neighbors object to having this in their neighborhood. It is a residential neighborhood. In 1930, this property was the boathouse of one of the houses on Riverside Drive. Since 1930, it's been a residential house. It got converted from a boathouse into a residential house. When he purchased it, he knew it was a residential house. You know, permits that were in place in 1930 and 1950 that allowed a bulkhead or dredging or anything like that. They do not allow dredging currently. That would, this would be totally new dredging. So we object to it being in a residential neighborhood. It's going to cause site pollution, environmental pollution, change the existing ecosystem, obstruct the waterway for other watercraft. It would be a disservice to all the neighbors, the abutters, and the people of Harwich to destroy the Heron River with a commercial farm. He wants to have a multi-million-dollar commercial farm put in place. There is 3 phases to this plan. One of the phases is to demolish the existing building and put up a commercial building, probably a hatchery. That is one of the parts of the second or third phase. My mother is one of the abutters, and she received a notice, but the only thing in the notice, which is in the back of that proposal, it referenced repairing the bulkhead. Nobody objects to repairing the bulkhead, but it did not reference a commercial scallop farm, dredging, or anything else, just repairing a bulkhead, which is less than forthright. What he's presenting to you is less than complete in that there is a 3-phase plan, and I think you need to have this, understand that he wants to have a commercial, multi-million-dollar business in a basin in the Heron River that everybody uses. It's not the right place for it. It shouldn't be allowed. He wants to have permanent year-round floats. So all along the bulkhead, he wants to have 6 feet out of floats, and they want to be permanent. The rules are only 200 feet. He's requesting a variance to have 700 feet, and eventually he wants more than that. He wants to have floats all in the bay. And the system that he's using, he doesn't want to change it from 6 feet because it's the system that Dan Ward uses for his fishing. That's what he is using. It is something that's in place. So you should not allow a variance of the square feet that is allowed per laws and regulations. The floats will decrease the channel area, impede navigation in the channel. Boats will be docked to access the scallop net baskets. In addition to repairs and maintenance, they're going to be commercial boats tied up to these. As it is, people have moorings that they've waited years to get. They wait years to get a mooring on the river, Heron River. Then they wait more years to get a mooring south of Lower County on the Heron River. There are existing moorings that are near the bulkhead that would be changed because of this. Their floats would be for an industrial commercial scallop farm in a residential neighborhood. It would be changing the authorized use of what should be there. I think, like changing the building from being residential, Chapter 91 authorization. People have moorings there. It's not fair. Dredging shouldn't be allowed as it would damage the riverbed, reduce the habitat complexity, the biodiversity, the ecosystem functioning. It looks like per the Heron River map that there are clam beds in that area. Like if you look at the map, it shows like oysters, quahogs, clams, and then at the end along Mill Point Beach, there's scallops. And currently, there's no shellfishing allowed currently in the Heron River. It's closed because due the national. So if
For
it's
seasonal closure every year.
If it's closed, why would we allow a scallop farm in there? I noticed on your website it's closed. The existing bulkheads are actually not on the riverbed. They're out in the channel. They're out in the river. The floats would go 6 feet out. It will, be more. And if he changes from scallops to, oysters or something, there's like odor, low tide odor. Feed used in scallop farming can contribute to nutrition pollution in the water, which can lead to algae blooms and low oxygen levels in the surrounding area. I think these are all things that need to be considered. It's an sensitive environmental area. The herring run, they go up and down and spawn. Would they be adversely affected by commercial farming? We have pipe-in plovers, terns, herons, having, like currently I don't think 24-foot boats are allowed to be moored in the Heron River anymore, or larger than 24 foot. It used to be, unless it's your personal dock.
It's 25.
So why would we allow 200 feet of floating commercial scalloping floats to be there? They're asking for multiple variances. The Wetlands Protection Act, the town of Harwich Wet Protection Bylaw regulations should be adhered to. They're asking for variance to land under the ocean, land containing shellfish, salt marsh, coastal beach, coastal bank, riverfront. We don't think that the variances should be allowed. Chapter 91 requires authorizations for floats. According to the town bylaws, no float should be permanent. They want these floats to be permanent. I heard them say that earlier. Permanent scallop commercial fishings. This really is a bad idea, and I think if you allow them to put in these floats and to start a commercial scallop fishing business, it's going to negatively impact the neighborhood, the area, the river. You mentioned if the cages come loose and, something happens, it is a very, the tide, it's very close to Nantucket Sound. The tide is very, the storms and whatnot, there is issues. And I think that everything needs to be considered. I think you need to consider that it is phase one of a multi-phase plan, and they are not being forthright, and it doesn't belong in this neighborhood. And I think everything needs to be considered.
Yeah.
And the neighbors are trying to get together with providing some documentation to outline our issues and what our concerns, and we want to present it to the Conservation Committee, the Waterways Committee, and let everyone know that this is not a good idea. And, we request that you allow us some time to, properly present it. If that would help, that we present something in writing. But we just wanted to come and make sure that most of the neighbors, couldn't be here in person. But we wanted to, express our concerns.
All right, thank you very much.
I believe
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly is on, and he provided the letter on behalf of the neighbors, and I don't know if you want to speak to that or what.
Yeah, we, let me find it here. There's just so many things I printed out at the end here. Do you have that?
I do.
Do you want to read it? Or?
Well, I didn't know if Mr. Kelly wants to address
He's
it.
right there.
I think
Yeah.
he's on.
You there, Mr. Kelly?
I am here. Good evening. I don't want to extend the length of your meeting. I appreciate you taking the time. Did try to summarize our concerns, which basically echo many of the things that we just heard from Maureen. I have talked to more than a dozen families that reside in this area, either directly on the river or very close to the river. Many of these families are boaters. They have boats on the river, either in docks or in moorings. And everyone that I have spoken to has very serious concerns about the effect of this on the waterway, on the safety of kayakers, of swimmers, of the fishermen that are out there every day on the jetty with lines. It is going to impact the salt marsh. I live directly across from this salt marsh, and I can tell you that we have endangered species in that salt marsh. We have herons, and we have plovers, and I can produce photographs that demonstrate that. And I will be frankly surprised if the state permits the kind of commercial enterprise, multi-million-dollar commercial enterprise that Mr. Lang is proposing. Because, it would be short-sighted to just view this in very narrow, fixing of the bulkhead and putting in, 10 or so floats. His long-term plan is very clear. He intends to fill that entire harbor with floats. And to make this a commercial enterprise, which is going to require commercial vessels to come into that river on a regular basis, to service those, that commercial operation, to make necessary repairs. He's going to need to access it, by the land in some respects. It can't all be done, on the water. But I will just tell you that, without exception, all of the neighbors in the surrounding area strongly object to and oppose this plan. No disrespect to Jeff, who's a very nice man, or Sandy, his wife. We've met with them and talked to them. I wish there was a mutually acceptable resolution that could be worked out here, but it doesn't appear that that's the case. And our intention, if he intends to go forward, is to vigorously fight this at every stage.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anything else from anybody?
Just, there was some misconceptions about scallop farming. One is they aren't feeding them, they're eating algae that's naturally growing. Every 2,000 scallops that we take from 1-inch size to adult size 5 to 6 inch shell from July when we put them out, because they're in our nursery and our hatchery before that, till November when we harvest them. They pull out, for every 2,000 animals that we grow out, we do 2.2 pounds of nitrogen being removed, because the whole animal comes out and goes off Cape to market. So it comes out of the river. It's not like doing an oyster reef that the oysters filter the water, scallops take it. Interestingly enough, because their shells are thin relative to oysters improving our water quality, the scallops are 3 times better at removing nitrogen than an individual oyster, because they put all of theirs in the protein in the adductor muscle. They tend to be regulated. They are not consumed as an animal in the half shell, the same as clams and oysters. So the consumption, or the water quality portion of it, they fall under the fish meat regulations, because you're just harvesting the adductor muscle and not the entire animal. So that allows us to do it. She talked about 2019 when Dan and I partnered. It's when we bought Bucky Barlow's boatyard in Cassett, and then got shut down the day we closed on it with COVID. And this is our first year to try to have a crop. So this business has taken that long to take an old boat building, a barn, and convert it to a state-of-the-art aquaculture hatchery. And that's part of our business, was creating a new business that the entire Cape and or other towns can create a blue industry out of having people farm these animals under existing permitted structure. So we're not asking for 10 acres of a grant to put oyster baskets on the surface. These guys like the water in between the bottom and the underneath of the docks. They like the middle section of the water system. And so the interesting part that we don't get a lot of credit for is when you imagine 100 feet by 6 feet deep, 4 feet wide, to the 30-inch cages hanging in there, the reef structure and three-dimensional structure that we build underneath our floats get completely filled full of glass shrimp, small black sea bass, tautags, all of the minnows that can now get inside our meshes that are living within the structure that we build is going to be a huge boon to the livelihood of the entire ecosystem. So we believe that there could be a good argument made that if you have a Chapter 91 license and the salinity is right and the depth is right, that you almost should be required to have animals being grown under your dock in order to offset the nitrogen that you and your household are putting into the river. So, it's like, it would be a win-win both for the people that are doing that farming, for the people that have docks, as well as for the health of the waters.
And I have a comment to make on that behalf. So you're saying that this would be your first harvestable crop, correct?
We're so far away from getting through permitting and doing construction.
Looking at here on phase 1, and I know that we've talked about phase 2 and such, and John and I have more of a context of that, but only looking at what we're looking at now, have you had any other harvestable crops in the past in other areas along the Cape?
We harvested about 40,000 animals last year, and this year they're not out yet because we ended up with a delay in our spawn.
Right.
So.
And you have health records for samples taken on all of it, and of course that's part
and
of
we're
my
doing cohogs and we're doing
interest.
oysters, but the bay scallop hatch this year is small. So, and part of the reason of looking at trying to see if we can get it permitted for year round is that you have a significant portion of your animals that stay in the 2 to 3 inch range that won't make it to where they're harvestable as just eat meats. And figuring out how to overwinter them. Unfortunately, they don't like to be iced down in a container the same as oysters do. So figuring out how do we, this is a kind of a gamble for us because we might find that the currents, especially in the wintertime, aren't conducive to those animals making it through successfully.
Sure.
But I'm willing to bet that it's an improvement to the whole river if we repair the seawall and I farm it as an option. The one comment about us building a commercial hatchery or commercial farm, they mistook my conversations with them that when we had 6 feet of water in the basement on the Christmas storm, and that house was not built to be continuously flooded with the rise of seawater and with the storm levels, is that we're most likely either going to lift it and put it on piers or remove it and put a smaller house home on piers that get it up out of the velocity zone. So that's the phase 3 they were talking about. It may be actually phase 2, because if we have many more storms like what we had in December, that house is going to come down because it was a significant velocity zone in the basement of that house, and it was never built for being there. So that's that's the other plan that we'll be happy.
All we can do is
but it's-
vote, all we can do is vote on this.
That's right.
Don't worry about the other one.
Yeah, okay.
All right, let's just stay with this.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say one thing.
Yes.
I've been across the street from Riverside Drive. We're on Riverside Drive. And River Bend used to flood the road maybe a couple of times a year. But now it floods probably once a month when it's full moon and high tide. And as Jeff said, the water crashes over the bulkhead, and it just is a mess down there. And I was just wondering, with all this dredging, would this make the whole operation worse?
Will they make the flooding worse
Yeah.
if they dredged?
Yeah.
I don't.
I don't
I think the flooding's worse if the bulkhead's gone.
Well, clear.
Yeah.
That I think.
I don't think it would have.
Where the problem comes.
I don't think it'd have major significant impact if the bulkhead was replaced. I mean, if you're gonna have, the bulkhead is at a certain level and you're gonna have sea water going over that, if it's new or old.
Because you see your land flooding more than you used to, right?
I don't know, I've only had it a couple of years. I just know my docks kept floating into my neighbor's yard, so I was down there helping them back into my yard as the tide was going out.
But not only your docks, I mean, your barrel bed, all
Everything.
that stuff.
Yep.
We're supposed to be talking to us,
Yep,
not
sorry.
them.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah.
No, you
Yeah.
carry that outside.
Yeah.
So I have a couple quick comments. So in my opinion, I can't deny, and nobody can deny, the potential benefits to scalloping and for their filter feeding purposes in general. It's still, and I know where you're getting at when you say, every homeowner along the river should be able to have, a farm to offset nitrogen within the river itself. Yes and no. I know if you're talking from professional experience of propagation and the risks associated with it, absolutely. But risk of having bay scallops within the water column in general, due to their having benefits there. Sorry, lost my train of thought. Having bay scallops within the river and the nitrogen that they can withdraw from the column is beneficial. Also introducing bay scallops to a river that does not hold native bay scallops as well can play into some perspective of potential shellfish disease, and you may be susceptible to that as well. So that's why I asked about your health records on how you are able to test and to certify your own process, because Division Marine Fisheries is in their own portion of it, and I'm in my own opinions as the shellfish constable and the risk associated with that. The comment that was made about the river itself and it being a closed area, it's a seasonally closed area. The river itself is predominantly used for commercial shellfishing operations, not for recreational use. So that is closed, excuse me, from May 1st until November 1st. So just because the water itself is deemed by Division Marine Fisheries to be uninhabitable for harvest, it does not mean that it is unsafe for growing operations. For context, in Witchmere, it is a closed area currently, but our propagation lab is based in Witchmere. We are growing our shellfish in Witchmere's closed waters. We are not harvesting and eating those out of that source. So when I ask about testing results, if you're not growing for seed and to be seeded to then filter themselves and potentially be harvested in the future in an open body of water, if you're straight from your aquaculture farm to a wholesaler that ends up on a table, the lineage to that is of risk if the appropriate testing is not to be performed.
And it all is.
Of course. So that's where I see it from a health standpoint and from a shellfish management standpoint. We are talking about an aquaculture farm, but we're also talking about a bulkhead. And of course, encroachment on the river. It's a complex, puzzling piece. What I would like to see is more renditions of where you would like to sit amongst size to please John here. I know what 100,000 bay scallops look like. It's not many. I know it's not many at all. Seeing the potential future uses and such, we don't know about that. We can only look at what we're looking at now. I see where you're looking at from from a trial standpoint, there is risk associated with it. 100,000 is very minimal risk in my opinion. You may find that it may not be worth it. There is a commercial operation for for shellfish propagation at the ARC lab that is just south of your location. That is successful to the degree. And I do know that Paul Wittenstein is here on the screen as well, and I'm sure he's going to want to make some comments, about his opinion on commercial operations within the river and where the potential for that can go. So I'd like to hear from Paul at some point, but as of now, that's my comments.
All right, so Paul Wittenstein, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you have any comments?
I don't want to make too many, just because I'm kind of just starting to find out about this. I've been buried in my own work since like April. I live under a rock. On the surface, I'm always for more shellfish in the water. They clean the water, or they create habitat for other fish. Kind of everyone's already covered that. As far as encroaching on the river, I don't really know too much about the dredging or the bulkhead replacement, but just the rafts themselves. I do go up and down the river with my own boat, and I think nobody should be within 6 feet of that bulkhead anyway, so I don't think some rafts there are going to really change navigation or the use of the river for fishing or kayaking or anything. Generally, I guess generally as a shellfish proponent and as a resident of Harwich, I'm kind of for it. I don't know if anyone
Who is he?
Paul, can you just give a quick background?
Yeah. Can you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Paul Wittenstein. I live in Harwich, and I also run the ARC shellfish nursery, which is just south of what we're talking about. On the old trap building, I've got some tanks inside, some upwellers that I use as a shellfish nursery to provide seed for about 70 to 80% of the 300 shellfish farms around Cape Cod.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to get a little background. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Any other comments? I think we're. Yep.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things that I don't think we have charge for.
Correct.
And I think that all the comments have had reasonable concerns, that's not what we're here and charged with to do. I love clean water, I don't think that the oysters are going to make any sounds for the neighborhood. But I also, your points are valid. I really like it. But again, we got to come back as a committee and deal with what our charge is, and our charge is the waterways. As I recall hearing the harbor master earlier, that there wasn't going to be any problem with the navigation with this project as it's presented in phase 1.
I did not say that.
Okay, would you correct me and
That's why I asked
okay,
about the widths of the float,
right.
about how much further in landward they were going to go with the bulkhead, because I think we need to limit the amount of encroachment that this project is going to have on the waterway. So
Okay.
what I'd like for Mr. Lang to do is to evaluate that. Can 4-foot wide floats work? I think they probably can. May not be his preferred option, but is that
Okay.
a compromise to try to limit the amount of encroachment? They already saved 1 foot by changing the location of the pile. I think that's great. Can we go further back landward
A foot.
a foot. You know,
Right.
those are the things that I think are important.
Right, and that's what I
But I
wanted to
am
get back
not
to.
ready to say, I don't
So,
see any
yeah.
navigation issue.
Right, okay, but that's what I wanted to get back to, because I heard a lot of concerns about valid points
Yes.
that we're not in charge of.
Well, that,
Yeah, so I
that's,
think
that's
we
one
need
thing
a-
too.
I
But
think
make
we
a
need a
motion?
revised
Yeah, well, I'm
plan
gonna-
to consider to
I
even
make a
take
motion?
a vote.
you sure, I mean, well, hold on, let me, that's what I
It
say
doesn't
something.
have to be supported.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I don't think we have enough information. You know, the plans have been changed. We can't,
That's my motion.
yeah, we can't afford to approve this tonight with all the information that got thrown on us last minute and/or now the floats are in between the piles. What's in front of us is not that. Is that correct?
This plan that was submitted, correct.
So we can't vote on a plan that's already been altered.
Revise and resubmit it.
So I appreciate everyone's comments. Thank you very much. But I just don't think we can vote on this at all. What's in front of us, that's already been changed.
Yep.
And if I could just throw one thing out there as well, so you can work on a proposal for it. I know that earlier in the conversation, it was projected that you could donate seed size of scallops to the town. I just want to be clear, the town, and for myself as the shellfish constable, we don't have an interest in scallop seed because of the limited amount of eelgrass that we have, plus the infrastructure needed to monitor and perfectly seed the scallop seed itself. So I know I would like to hear a little bit more on how you planned on working with me to uphold that comment. But until then,
Yeah, I just know we're working with Bass River Group, Friends of Bass River, on a 10-year plan to actually reinstate commercial fishing for bay scallops in the river. So that's.
I'm sure there's a lot of
they're
things to
looking
it, but I would
at
like
how
to-
do we work together on creating improving the wild stock. And so that was why that was kind of the reasoning behind putting that in there, is that's certainly part of the entire process is not when you're farming, not pissing off the wild harvest people. It's like we can work symbiotically with them. Our goal is to figure out how to get them on the menu in June, July, and August.
Yeah.
When they can't.
Right.
So.
All right. So.
I think somebody had.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sandy. Yes.
I'm wondering if the gentleman from Natural Resources could comment, because it's always been my understanding that the reason we're having such a problem with eelgrass is because of the nitrogen levels.
I can't give you a whole presentation at the moment of why there are issues with eelgrass specifically within Herring River. Nitrogen is an issue that is apparent. We know that does correlate, especially for studies that were found on Martha's Vineyard. Specifically, yes, that's apparent. Is it also the significant tidal flow that we do see within the river? Possibly. I mean, the currents in the river are very, very fast, very significant, especially on the bottom level. There's so much that has to be put into play as to why that is an issue currently. And listening to Jeff and hopefully in the future coming up with good plans, like a 10-year plan, et cetera, to bring back habitat in the within the river is, of course, all open ears to that. But I know that I just wanted to get ahead of the quick comment of seed being donated to the town, but we can't do anything with the seed, so it's not of any use at the moment. But working alongside myself for the future would be what I would like to see. So,
good. Yeah. More conversation.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I mean, as the committee, I think we're ready to vote.
Make a motion. Yeah.
Make a motion and
Move on here. I'm going to make the motion that we suspend or delay the vote on this project until the applicant comes back with additional studies and information on where the actual bulkhead can be placed, which is what establishes the line that can be where the floats are going to be set, and then look and review based on the harbor master's suggestions of what they can do to compromise or to minimize the size of the floats, and come back with a couple of alternatives, not just one, but a couple, suggestions of what you can be done. And again, we're only an advisory committee. We're not regulatory. We have absolutely no authority. Okay, we review projects to vet them, pass them on to the next people. There's a lot smarter people that review this stuff. Well, all we do is waterways. We don't get into floats, and we don't get into harvesting scallops and what they do and what they don't do and anything else. We just look at our waterways. So this has gone on a little too long.
I'd like to, if I may,
Yeah.
just be clear that the harbor master does have regulatory authority over the waterway.
He does. Very good.
Just want to be clear.
You've been kind of involved in the
We
show.
do have a sheriff. We do have a sheriff in town. Yeah, he's the sheriff.
I don't mean
We share that
any-
balance,
I
John.
just want to be
No,
clear.
he's right. But us as a board has none. So just, that's what I would do.
All right, we're gonna make a motion
Hold this
to
up.
pretty much shelve it until we get some more options and some more detail.
Okay.
Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good discussion.
Yeah,
Yes.
And
absolutely.
when do we have to get with you for being on next month's agenda?
If you just tell me you want to be on next month's agenda, I'll make
We
sure
would
that
like to
you're
be
on
next
it.
month's agenda.
And
Well,
then just have whatever you require, your revised plans a week prior, so I can have.
Yeah,
it for
we
the
just had
agenda.
too much information at the last minute.
The only thing I would suggest is you make sure you know where the bulkhead can be placed.
That's
Because it was, you had a foot here, a foot there, based on this, based on that. And it's a foot here, a foot here makes a difference.
That's right. Yep. Oh, I know. That's kind of where we've been
That's-
trying to figure out exactly how far in we can squeeze it.
That's the line in the sand.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, no old business, monthly reports.
So you guys should have received my April, May, I did a 2-month monthly report. A couple things that have happened, since we completed our dredging of Witchmere Channel. As I think you know, it got delayed because we ran into the horseshoe crab time of year restrictions, so the state made us halt and wait until June 8th to start dredging again. So unfortunately, we were dredging kind of in the middle of the boating season, but we got it done without much problem. I just found out this week that we got another $106,000 grant for dredging from the state for next season, which is great, especially considering, as you know, the price of per cubic yard charge that the county's charging municipalities has more than tripled. So we're paying 12 right now, and we're going to be paying 28 something cubic yard. So that money really helps us. It's a lot. But that's it. It's been a good season so far. The winds have not been very conducive to boating, so the first part of the season really has been somewhat slow. But all is good at the harbor. We got a couple of new hires that are working out perfect, and so we're in good shape. Any questions about monthly report or anything about the harbor?
Anything with the Board of Selectmen?
We have nothing. Thank you all for doing what you did. Thanks for coming. Absolutely.
I didn't know that was you. You were incognito there.
You got the hat.
Not often we get guests.
All right, like to make a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion to adjourn meeting.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Apologies.
Thank you. That's okay. No, there's a lot of discussion. I know. No worries. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. It's warm.
Yes, sir.
It's like crazy anyway. Then you put it in a hot room.